Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Hearts of Iron for the New Order, Last Days of Europe, with me, Alpha Pi Omega, and Empire of Japan. So 2nd of February 1963, and we're doing sort of good. We've ended the last episode by deciding that in this one we're gonna do the first quarter report. We've checked our economy is doing, which is great. Debt to GDP is now at 97.6% and dropping like a rock every single month. Inflation, for some reason, is dropping significantly, which is also great. Generally speaking, everything is fine. So unless there's going to be a massive civil war breaking out in China or Indonesia very soon, we are doing great. Where we are not doing great, though, is in the state of the military and navy. I have a distinct feeling that the situation is going to be much, much worse, because when they said that that warehouse was empty, well, it wasn't supposed to be. It was supposed to be full of very valuable goods, and it's fair to say that if that is missing, then a lot of other stuff will be missing as well, and that's not going to bode well for us in case of a large-scale conflict. So, police contacts. The civilian police has never been the most powerful institution in Imperial Japan, but it does have its own set of influence. Without the constant monitoring of criminal groups and round-the-clock vigilance of the elite Tokyo police, I guess that might be Tokyo police or Tokyo police, I'm not sure what Tokyo means, the order and progress prized by every Japanese might become a very distant dream indeed. The civilian police's ability to get crimes solved without the endless internal politics of the various military policies was also in a league of its own. Making use of this influence to cover the investigation would, however, be quite tricky. There was no way to tell just how deep the tendrils of the Navy and Army reached inside the department, but the investigation units also had its own allies. The gravity of the unfolding conspiracy would also help convince more conservative members of the police department to throw their weight behind the idea of an evidence-collecting raid. And so the investigation team worked, filtering every police officer into reliable and unreliable groups. Internal sorting. When the time came to show cards, a surprising proportion of the Tokyo Police Department were forecast to stand behind the investigation team. Time to go see our boss. Well, okay. That's gonna be interesting. The good news is we're raking in quite a lot of army experience. I'm thinking in the second half of this year we're gonna start investing into a little bit of an army reform. I would like to get rid of all of the weaker Chian Shidan units and turn all of them into Hohei Shidan, which we can then develop a little bit by giving them extra support units and probably logistics company or field hospitals. We'll see. Did we set the second fleet for drilling? We did. Okay, so the first fleet is finished, which is great. Just the submarines keep on drilling, but that's fine. The second Kantai is currently undergoing its drills. We started the production of a bunch of destroyers, unnamed amount of Soyokaze 1963 refit, which is pretty good. They're gonna be, I guess we're gonna create an additional fleet, like a patrol fleet that's gonna sail around Japan and maybe in the Yellow Sea, just to make sure there are no submarines in there. We'll see. And we finished the agency upgrade of the air department, so stuff is sort of chugging along. So what next? We could go with the modernization of the cryptology department or global training center on the modern interrogation methods. Let's go with the modern interrogation methods. The increase of 100% in the enemy operative capture chance is actually a pretty good thing. I don't think there's anything that will help us. Infiltration, wiretapping. No, not true. I was hoping that something would help us with building up the spy network, but nothing like that here. The agency and infiltration would be good, but let's start with the modern interrogation methods. That's going to be useful. We want to make sure, above everything, that we are secure in our own territory. Go up. Tachi and Kodaira looked at each other grimly before they entered the office of their boss. They had worked hard to ensure that they had the proper allies and contacts to make this operation a reality, spending days finding the best man for the job, but they had to admit the idea was still rather risky. As soon as they explained the planned raid, their boss immediately began tearing into it. He was extremely skeptical that it could work at all, and worried about how terrible the repercussions could be if it did fail. He was a man who played by the rules, and the rules were not terribly well defined here. We were going against the beast. So what can we expect? The discussion was on the brink of becoming a full-blown argument, but through deft teamwork and excellent planning, Kodaira and Tachi were able to hold their ground without pushing too hard. They explained every aspect of their plan and how it would be executed, and any concerns their boss might have were quickly eased. It was not short of easy, but after a long session their boss was finally convinced the raid would happen. There was one catch though. The boss was not convinced that the team had all the people needed to properly carry out the raid with the needed precision and ambition. He ordered the two detectives to gather more allies, people with real power and experience. He suggested less savory organizations that felt cheated by the competition from the government, or politicians who could use their clout to support the investigators and hurt their rivals. If Tachi and Kodaira could get the necessary help, then the raid would happen. Allies in politics are the safer bet. Sometimes you need a criminal to catch a criminal. Allies in politics, we need a cover from the top. Good news is that the fuel capacity increased by about 50% already. We're at 953k at this point. You guys actually mentioned in some of the previous episodes that, or in the comments on some of the previous episodes, that I can build also in other territories than Japan proper. Which, while true, the reason why I'm not doing it is that it's very important to build it in territories where you have a lot of people. So building it, for example, in, I don't know, Toyohara is much less effective than when you build it in Tokyo. From these areas, some of them are actually pretty good, especially the one around Jinsen and Kijo would be good. Then in the north there are some populous areas as well. What about Taiwan? 2,1,260,000. I'm trying to find, some areas which are, fairly populous, and I went by the logic that most of the territories in Japan will be always a safer bet. Plus, there's a lot to say about Japanese chauvinism, so... Okay, but I'm looking... Hokkaido is actually a pretty good one that I didn't consider before, and south... Okay, Fukuoka, that one is a pretty large one, I know about that one. So, well, the reason why I'm doing that is this. I'm trying to hit the biggest areas. The matter of the fact is that when it comes to construction, the effectiveness of our offices has increased significantly, and so did the school coverage. But we need a little bit more hospitals, prisons, and army bases. But schools and offices are the important one. I'm trying to increase the political power as much as I can, and even the 0.05 per day adds up to what? That's 0.5 per 10 days, 1.5 per month, which is about 15 per year, and that is already, you can do something with the 15. In 2 years we get an extra influence action, so, if we continue with that, it might eventually work in our favor. Cabinet contacts. Tachi quickly went to work on getting in contact with politicians who might be willing to help the two detectives and the investigative team. He did some quick research and asking around, finding the proper rivalries and ties that could be exploited to make them more sympathetic. He had a rather large file on the subject, and rifling around through it, He already was finding some very promising leads. He picked up the phone and started making some calls as soon as he had the right info gathered. The talks were somewhat covert, with every word having to take on a double meaning, so neither side could be incriminated, but after a while Tachi was making progress. One particular minister had been feuding with a high-ranking admiral for a few months and was looking for any chance to shame him. Well, there is a lot to be said for personal rivalries. That admiral just so happened to be closely involved with this case, and so it was essentially a done deal as soon as his name was brought up. Tachi gathered up several other various ranked politicians before calling it a night. The web of intrigue grows. Oh yes. Okay, we could improve the conservative relations, so let's do that. That puts us back to 253 MPs, which is a safe area to be in. How often can we do this one? I haven't checked. Every month or something? Or half a year? Because the excellent and good relations are fine, but I would like to boost the reformist, independent and technocrat relations a bit more. The permanent is fairly good. We might want to do a little bit more inter-service training program again. So I'll probably take that one next. Okay, so what do we have here? The United Arab Kingdom. United Arab Kingdom. So is that Saudi Arabia that we'll be talking about? Or... Following a long and complex process of negotiations which failed to find a compromise solution for the convoluted situation in the Italian Levant, the Jerusalem Conference has ended with the formal declaration of the United Arab Kingdom. Okay, so it's here. Okay. So that's interesting. They were talking about the Jewish and Arab and Christian question there already. So that's going to be an interesting area to look into. A newly formed country which will encompass the entirety of the former Italian possessions in the region. Abdullah ibn al-Hussein, Hashemite Emir of Transjordan, has been chosen as the new king. The decision to hand over control to Abdullah was not sudden. The Emir collaborated with Italy in exchange for autonomy for his emirate, and quickly rose to prominence as one of the main leaders of the Arabs in the country, promising to rule according to secular and constitutional principles, allowing autonomy and freedom to all the ethnicities of the Levant. Abdullah is still enormously unpopular among the Jews of Palestine, and many of them are apparently already organizing to set up resistance to his rule. Well, okay, that's a great start to the new nation. And Malagasy tradecraft. West of the Ikopa River, Officer Fale takes an early lunch. He leaves the German dairy station and walks along the Ponte Annosizato east, turns south to the roundabout and checks behind him before entering the Café Totomatin. Ikopa River, I have no idea where this is taking place. He takes a seat where the plaster wall meets the brick, facing the front door, and orders a mofo sakai with coffee. He takes a newspaper, ignores the front page, and heads straight to the crosswords. He writes in the squares, but they do not correspond with the clues. He finishes his food and drink with speed and leaves the newspaper folded in half on the seat. Oitiana clears the table of the coffee cup and plate and tucks the newspaper into the front of her apron. At the end of the long day, she takes a bag of caca and walks south along the Ikopa River. The evening sun hides behind the western mountains. A German soldier leers at her. She does not change her pace. On the way back home, she stops by a garage and hands the bag to her childhood friend, a mechanic. They have a brief conversation about their day and part amicably, Oleana leaving the newspaper behind. Adrian Tefika throws the newspaper into the backseat of his truck, next to some groceries and a toolkit, and drives off at midnight. He passes by the lights of Tananarive. Okay, so that's at Madagascar. Yep. I was thinking that it might be Madagascar because that's a continuation of the story that's happening there, as he drives towards a little three-room house of his own on the outskirts of town. When he arrives, he gives his wife a kiss and the bag of cacapizone, her favorite as always, and heads downstairs. His guests look up from his book and accept the newspaper with impatience. Sujio snatches the newspaper out of the Tafama man's hand and flips to the crosswords, copying the answers. Through the code, he reads about the growing organization of the police. There are eyes on the gendarmerie, but they are working to blind them. Sugio smiles, taps out the untranslated report in Morse code on the radio in front of him. Through the airwaves, this coded proclamation of mutiny impeding arrival is sent. To the Germans in their listening post, it's just more junk on the airways. Okay, so things are getting a little bit of a move on Madagascar. I'm thinking whether or not we should send a spy there. 27% spy network in United States and 27% in Australia. So what can we see about Australia? Not that many factories, army fairly weak. We have about 3 times the strength. They got only 8 ships. They got a huge amount of aircraft though. I still feel like our aircrafts are... No, we get enough. We get 1571 fighter points, 100 tactical bombers, 270 strategic bombers. No, we're doing good. Still live in the past, basically. To catch a thief, the investigation team has gathered a cabal of uneasy friends and allies. The planning is in its final stages. The planners determined that a fast and clean raid is both possible and extremely desirable. A single drop of bloodshed by either side could spell a catastrophe. The last thing anyone wants is conflict among loyal servants of the Empire. Thus, this operation must be planned down to the millisecond, every step mapped out, every factor brought into the equation. There remains, however, one titanic decision: to raid the army or to raid the navy. It seems that for this particular unsavory endeavor, the two have put aside their differences for mutual gain, but the general separation and traditional rivalry means that only one can be focused on. The team is divided on who plays the larger role and who is the riper target, but eventually a decision has to be made. We strike the army, they will have the more information. Target the navy, they are the greater culprit. Oh god. Well, the navy is shipping around all of the goods. Though, is there any goods? And the army is paying with their yen. So I'd say the army. Though that politician was having a beef with the admiral. Let's go after the navy. I don't like it, but I think that that's the better choice. We shall see. Okay, 2 more Yamato class ships needs to be finished. I should be doing good with the helicopters, aren't we? Wait, where are they? Oh, here, 103 in reserve. Okay, that's pretty good. Efficiency is already at 30%. That's really good. We're getting some of the transport planes, jet fighters, the strategic bombers, and jet tactical bombers are unfortunately far from ideal, and the jet cruiser support as well. Jet fighters. I mean, once the Navy is done with the drilling, we are going to look at reforming our Air Force. We're gonna drill some and get rid of some others, and it's gonna be good. The second Malaxi uprising. Terror has struck Madagascar today, as what was initially a rebellion of native collaborated police has now spiraled into a total collapse of 40. Here we go. That's what I remember. As what was spiraled into a total collapse of authority on the African island. The French colonial government has in effect been dissolved completely. In this vacuum, the German garrison has largely taken matters into its own hands, succeeding the French authorities. Alongside this, there has been reports of various native uprisings. most aligning under the umbrella of the Governing Council. Latest news indicate that the colonial authorities have been intensely fighting for control over the various urban centers across the island, with the council both bidding favor from Japan and also finding support through private backers with ties to Free France. Germany, meanwhile, has been quarreling with France as to the legality of their seizure, the final spasms of that empire. So wait there. 13th anniversary. No current involvement. Okay, but I wonder if we will get the ability to get involved. And we have free production units. How lovely. Oh, we have a lot of free units. Okay, so let's put free here and free on the military. And we're gonna add them to the most painful airplane production queues. Okay, the improved jet needs one as well. So I think we can lower the improved attack helicopters a little bit for that. 143. Okay, I guess I'll need to lower that a little bit more. Oh, like this, that should suffice. So the Navy HQ. It seemed like the obvious choice, and Tachi saw no point in moving away from the path of least resistance. After a closed-door debate with Kodaira and a search for bugs and surveillance equipment immediately before said debate, the Navy was deemed as the branch of the armed forces more liable for investigation. Kodaira laid out his old arguments. The Navy wasn't the owner of the goods in the first place, and as shipment movers they simply couldn't provide details as to the whereabouts of the missing equipment. Tachi pointed out that the Navy might not have details on it, but the 100 little sub-companies hitched onto its back had more than sufficient details on the matter to justify a raid. And while the Navy ended and these sub-companies began was anyone's guess. The cash flows of these companies, surely critical to any analysis of the Navy, would also be invaluable and should therefore be captured sooner. In any case, the Navy's involvement with the investigation had become so deep-rooted that it would almost be a relief to move from the subtle passive-aggressive dances of bureaucratic handwriting to outright antagonism. On this, Kodaira was silent. He had been on the receiving end of too many chidings from the Navy Ministry to disagree. The debate was settled. The gears of the team began to move. Let us begin proceedings then. With that said, we should start preparing our units for the deployment. So we got 49 and 49 on Type 2, Type 101 and Type 102. So if we wanted to upgrade the Taishin Shudan, that would still be way too little, wouldn't it? We would need 108, yeah. But it would still provide us at least a certain amount. 150. Adding the AFV as well? Or something else? The logistics company here would be probably better. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna touch it now. At this point, we don't want to waste anything. We'll have to wait for the production to go up. Okay, the end of French Madagascar, that tells me that we're probably going to be able to involve ourselves now. And the factories are all assigned. Good. So the first quarter report is done. Our GDP increased by 1.3 billion, but inflation as well. Next, the glory of the sphere. We've finally done it. Japan has dredged up the poor, faltering nations under the boot of the West and lifted them up through economic growth and great prosperity. Standards of living are at an all-time high, and technology continues to push forward without relenting. While the two other thirds of the world are crawling in the mud and suffering, Japan has created an economic system to last the ages and bring bounty. Nippon Banzai, Nihon Teikoku Banzai. Nippon Banzai. So we get 100 political power, production efficiency growth by extra 5% increased, and factory output increased by 5%. The output especially is a good one. The end of French Madagascar. Madagascar was burning. In a small government building on the outskirts of the capital of Tananarive, postman Benoit Moudon stares out of the window. He can almost see the fires from the city and hear the crackle of gunfire. No matter who wins the battle, the German coup has ensured French rule was over, and if he did not find a way out of the country soon, so would his life. On a remote southern beach, Tsiraka Rakotomavo, a PADESM political advisor, sits atop a crate of American weapons reading an encoded telegram. He curses to himself. The chance for a relatively bloodless police coup was lost. More men must die before Madagascar can be free. In the shadows of his overturned jeep, the German officer pleads for his life. Tafama guerrilla Albert Razafi isn't listening. He picks up the Nazi's fallen sidearm and aims it at his head before hesitating and instead crunching his boot into the German's skull. The second uprising had begun. This was no time to be wasting ammunition. In the depths of the eastern jungles, AKFM communist insurgent Mazino Rebearivelo listens to the intercepted radio and smiles. Their time has come. Colonial authority has collapsed, battle lines were being drawn, and the people's warriors had awoken from their long slumber. Madagascar was burning, but the insurgent knew. From its ashes a new order would rise. Now can we or can we not get involved? Still nothing. Get more production units? Really? Okay, let's put it on the factories then. How's the research doing? The prototype entire equipment is insane. 371 days. I mean, it is an entirely new... wow. No, it takes insane amount of time to research that. I guess it's because it makes your units so much stronger, and it's just a flat-out bonus. I guess. Finding a branch. In the end, it was the paperwork that did the Yokosuka Naval Logistics and Supply Base in. That was its formal name, anyway. Most just called it Yokosuka. It had been relatively underdeveloped following the war, with official funds flowing to centers connected to the arteries of the sphere, places like Shonan and Jakarta. Although funds had dried up, other sources of revenue and supplies had replaced them. Very interesting sources. And the amount of paperwork done to justify this diversification, even more interesting. In fact, the most interesting part of this was the paperwork itself appeared to fit a base far larger than the Yokosuka base. Analysis created an image of sprawling center of military activity with complex logistics and supply chains. This activity was totally absent from the payrolls, the records at Central HQ and the public eye, but it was there. The question was, to what end? Subsidiary factors only improved the suitability of the base. The unguarded paperwork trail that had attracted the team to the base meant that the base was run by management either blinded by their greed or brainless in their actions. Not that Navy men couldn't be both. To ensure the smoothest possible course of entry, the team spent a week creating a foolproof alibi. They became members of the local branch of Kotachi United Shipping Supplies, a company run from faraway Sapporo by the Kotachi brothers, Navy veterans with an impeccable record. This record was also entirely fictional, but who'd notice? It was a world of shadows, and the team knew that the best plans always came to fruition in the dark. Sources were traced, money changed hands, meetings were arranged, the game was on. Let us lay the trap. Oh, it's 1st of March and we get more production units. Our economy is booming. And I think it's, yep, because, wow, the debt to GDP dropped to 96.6. I mean, our GDP increased by 1.2 billion, so it jumped up. Inflation is still far below yearly surplus, is pretty good. Though it didn't increase all that much. I mean, it keeps increasing, but not dramatically. Debt servicing is fairly low. Yeah, I mean, we should be happy with this. On that note, I think we're gonna call it an episode. The glory of the sphere will come next time. Wait, are you telling me we have more units? We do. Oh god. Okay, so let's add... I was thinking of adding more to consumer goods. At this point it seems a little bit like a waste, so let's just dump them into construction. We can put them into more Actually no, you know what we can do? We can lower it by 2 and add them to factories, and then the factories will be added to the type 101 and type 102, Sapporo and Keijo, which is going to increase the production of Revenisa to 3.3 per week. We need to make this go up if we want to, you know, utilize it in a close time. We're going to get a little bit of a bonus here in the factory output. The efficiency growth is also going to go up, but still we need to build a decent stockpile. We're not even, well, I mean, we're at half with the Sapporos, but or maybe Keijos, but one of them is at half, one of them is at third. So anyway, thank you very much for joining me. I'll consider this a nice episode, and Snap Freeze and UK Kill Hundreds is going to be the start of the next episode. So till then, you guys take care.